Hello my friends, welcome to what I'm imagining at this point is going to be an excessively long video. I still haven't even wrapped up like the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books, which I will tack onto the end of this yet, and it's long. So July reading month. What happened in July? I read so many great books and I like binge read so much, and then on August 1st, which is the day I'm filming this, I realized I didn't even finish my Read Your Bookshelf book for the month. I just got distracted by so many other books. I'm more than halfway through it, I think, at this point. So I'll finish that in August as well. But lots of good books that I read this month I will be talking about in this video. I think for August, I might do a mid-month wrap-up where I talk about the books from the first half of the month, and then do another one at the end of the month for the second half. The problem is those kinds of videos don't get nearly as many views, but I don't like posting videos that are eternally long like this. I don't know, I might change my mind. Maybe I won't read anything in August and it will be a super short video. Who knows? But I did film a couple clips throughout the month, wrapping up books relatively soon after I read them, because I definitely go for quantity and forget a lot of details as I go, so I prefer to talk about books shortly after I've read them. This month was heavy on the fantasy. There was also some nonfiction and some other genres thrown in, but it's mostly fantasy. So let's get into my thoughts on all the books. If you're at all curious as to how July is going, normally I have like 3 or 4 books per clip that I do here, because it's about a week generally in between. I have a lot of books to talk about this time, but it's not as many as it looks, so we will start with that. First of all, I forgot to wrap up a book in June, and that is Growing Boldly by Emily Ley. This is a non-fiction book. Dare to build a life you love. She uses the word build, which is believe in who you are and whose you are. Utilize what you have, imagine the life you dream of, love your people and all people well, do what matters, forget the rest. I really enjoyed this. I thought with moving, June would be a good time for me to read this, like starting a new life, and I really enjoyed it and passed it on to my 13-year-old because I thought it would also be a really good book for her. And if I pass a book on to her, then that is generally an indication that I really enjoyed it. So highly recommend this. I got it off of Book Outlet. Last I saw, they still had some copies available. So there's that. I generally tend to not talk a whole lot, like at length, about my nonfiction, but I'll tell you what, I enjoyed that one. Okay, then actually the next 3 books were all part of a video, and the first one I finished at the end of June, but I didn't want to put it in my June wrap-up because these 3 books were for my reading only romance books for a week video. So if you want to hear my thoughts while I was reading them as someone that like never reads romance books, I have a whole video on that. The first book was 100 Days of Sunlight by Abby Emmons. This is a YA romance story about a girl named Tessa who was in a car accident with her grandmother and was told she lost her sight. She was told it would be temporary, and she was a blogger and poet before this. She's, I think, 16 years old and can't type, write on her blog, write out her poetry, being blind. So her parents decide, or her grandparents, who she lives with, decide to put an ad in the paper looking for someone that will be able to type for her. They call to cancel it because she doesn't actually want it once she finds out what they're planning, and the guy whose father owns the paper hears it, happens to be a 16-year-old himself, and decides to go offer his assistance when he hears a little bit about her story. And the reason that he's so interested is he has gone through a hard time. A few years before, he lost both of his legs, and he convinces Tessa's grandparents to let him help her, but he makes them promise not to tell her that he doesn't have any legs. He bears the brunt of her frustration and anger, and he kind of enjoys it because for the last 3 years everybody tiptoes around him because, you know, when you see him, it's like, well, my problems can't be that bad, or like, you know, everyone kind of just allows him to be right all the time, whether or not he is, because of it, and he enjoys his time with someone that has no idea what has happened to him. So I actually really enjoyed this. That was a surprise to me. Enjoyed that one. The next one that I went on to read was Authentically Izzy. There are a lot of bookish quotes in here, a lot of which is tabbed. I'm gonna have to take these out so I can return this to the library. This is mostly told through emails. Our main character, Izzy, her well-meaning cousin who she grew up with. She grew up with 3 of her cousins. This older one that has put her on a dating site. And then there's 2 other cousins that she continues to email in here. She generally emails the 2 cousins together and then like the older one separately. So her cousin has put her on this dating site. Izzy is a librarian, introverted, loves books, and she has some interactions with someone online who also enjoys books as much as she does. And there's a lot of vibes in here that I enjoyed, all the bookish ones. I was actually very surprised in my Reading Romance for a Week video that like the first 2 books were I very much enjoyed them, but I do feel like they are not necessarily like a typical romance book. There's a few pages in here where we are actually with the characters. There's like a few brief parts, like 3/4 of the way through, where we're not in letters. That I found a little bit more cringy and harder to bear, but the emails I really enjoyed. The bookish quotes I really enjoyed. So I don't know if I will continue the series, but I enjoyed this one. Then I went on to try The Blonde Identity by Ali Carter, and I got, I think, a little less than halfway through and DNF'd it for sexual content that I was not wanting to read about. So that was unfortunate because I do enjoy Ali Carter's writing. I think this is her first adult book. I've read her middle grade and her YA and enjoyed those. And yeah, if this is going to be how her adult series books go, I'm not going to pick them up. But in this one we follow a woman whose name we don't know. She wakes up in Paris and she has no memory of anything, but she sees a video of herself because apparently they're looking for her. The world at large is looking for her because there's a video of her beating up a bunch of guys, and some guy tells her that her name is Alex and she's a spy. But they quickly find out that she's not Alex, she's Alex's twin sister. And it was an interesting concept for a book. I thought it was going to be different than what it was. I thought it was like more of a road trip thing, and it wasn't. But either way, I ended up DNFing it, so that was sad. After that, I needed something that was not romance. So I picked up what was my broccoli book for my July TBR. That was a surprise, that picking that on the spinner wheel. That was Emerald Windows by Terry Blackstock. Now, I read a lot of Terry Blackstock. Well, I've read almost every one of her books. I hadn't heard of this one, but I read a lot of them in high school, and I've read a bunch of them in the last few years. And her books are always have some kind of suspense in them. And I ended up DNFing this book. I got like 70-ish pages in. Yeah, pretty much exactly. And I had to quit it because the characters were all driving me nuts. And this is not like a suspense thrillery type book like her other ones are. This, I would say, is just cringe. So what it is our main character is Brooke. When she was in her last year of high school, she had this art teacher. Like, she was very artistic and he was very artistic, and so he spent a lot of time working with her, helping her with her art. And then ends up being rumors that there's more going on between them, and so she instantly flees her community like the night that the rumors start, kind of thing, and doesn't come back for 7 years. And then she comes back to work on some stained glass in a church, and it turns out this guy is the head of the project. And don't you know, the rumors start flying again, and it's like pretty much just one lady one very influential lady in this town that is starting these rumors, and everyone just listens to her, and she just takes little things she hears or sees and blows them out of proportion, which drove me crazy. But then also, like, Brooke has no backbone whatsoever. She, like, barely ever tells people that nothing happened. So, like, of course the rumors are gonna fly. And then Nick, the male character, like, there's parts, like, he ends up losing his job because of what happened in that year of high school with this girl. Just because the lady that saw something was very influential. But then he keeps insinuating to Brooke, like, oh, doesn't she like him? When we've been with Brooke and we haven't seen any evidence of that. And, like, so I'm not even rooting for these characters because they just irked me. So I DNF'd that one. I don't know if I've ever DNF'd a Terry Blackstock book before. But this is my broccoli pick because of that. So that actually worked pretty well, I think. A lot of people said I could have picked, like, a book that is, like, supposed to be good for you, which would make sense with broccoli. I really like broccoli, so I could have also gone with something I really like. But I thought that was fitting. It looked a lot like it, but unfortunately I didn't enjoy it. Then from there, I went on to read The Storyteller's Daughter by Victoria McCombs. So this is the first book in her series. They're fairy tale retellings. I don't remember what the series is actually called. The Storyteller series makes sense. So this one is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, and I thought what she did with this was very creative. So we're in a land where 100 years ago magic entered the kingdom, and everybody is born with a gift. They discover it at some point, and the gifts are very interesting. Like, they can be useful or they can be very obscure. So her mother, I thought this was really good because this is, like, you know, just like the quintessential pointless gift. Her mother can turn apples to peaches, but only on Sundays. And, like, the main character, Cosette, she's even, like, she didn't have the heart to tell her mom would, like, make peach pie then. She didn't have the heart to tell her mom that she actually preferred apples to peaches, which I just think is kind of funny. But Cosette, our main character, was not born with a gift. Her family owns a tavern. They're very poor. Her father is a storyteller, so that's why their tavern is still going while most of the other ones have shut down in their town. And one day he tells a story about a girl that can spin gold from straw. And then he tells the people that it's his daughter, Cosette, who can do this. But he was meaning this more as, like, she has many hidden talents, not like she can literally spin straw into gold. But the king hears about this story and goes and takes her away and threatens to kill her if she doesn't turn straw into gold. And based on how far it takes, I don't think I can actually say what happens. I don't want to give any spoilers, but I mean, she doesn't die right away, I'll say that. Something happens. She meets a couple different people. There's two, like, potential love interests in this book, and the thing that kept me from rating it 5 stars is the fact that I didn't really like either one of them. I didn't feel like either of them were very believable. And if you know the Rumpelstiltskin retelling, I was buddy reading this one with my patron of the month, and she said, like, she kept imagining Rumpelstiltskin as a goblin because that's kind of how he's portrayed in the fairy tales. And I was like, yes, that's the problem. They talked about Rumpelstiltskin's blonde curls, but they didn't, like, really, oh, and he had, like, a pointy nose or something. Like, so I just kept thinking kind of like goblin-esque with his pointy nose and blonde curls, and it wasn't a cute thing. So, like, it wasn't a believable love interest in my mind. And then there was another guy that was a love interest, which I was also kind of like, I don't really know where I stand on this. So I want to continue this series, but I just wish things would have been a little bit different in certain parts. But I really thought she did took a creative spin on the Rumpelstiltskin story. And I have another book, last one for now. Although I don't think at this rate it's not going to take me long to finish another one. I also read A Midnight Dance by Joanna Davidson Politano. Now, I was looking on my shelves and I think I might officially be caught up with her books. I think so. She has another one coming out this fall, but I feel like it took me a little while to catch up, and I feel good now that I'm caught up. So this one we follow Ella Blythe. She is a ballet dancer. her mother was one before her, and there is this story. So her mother was this famous ballerina, and she got burned one night. But the story goes, everyone thinks that she died in that fire, but her mother was actually just very scarred and no longer danced and hid away, so no one knew that she was actually still alive. And Ella wants to become a dancer, and so we kind of follow her into the world of ballet in, I think this is like the Victorian period. I enjoyed this book. As someone that is not interested in ballet at all, I feel like that did take away from the story a little bit, but not a ton. I liked the ending. There were a lot of different twists going on there at the end that I didn't see coming at all. If I would have had a bit more of a hint of that, I think I would have enjoyed the story more. But also, like, I love that the twist surprised me. It's just now knowing what I know, I think I would enjoy a reread more. The one thing that I really do enjoy about Joanna Davison Politano's books is her ability to weave faith elements through the stories really well. Our characters always go through a significant period of spiritual growth in her stories, and I really appreciate that. So that's a lot of books, and it is just the 8th today, so at this rate I'm gonna have finished quite a stack by the end of the month. Okay, I think this is a really good week here. I have 4 books to share, and they've all been 4.5 5-star books. So yes, you're welcome. The first book, unfortunately now, like I finished it right after my last clip. I read it all that day, within one day. The Heir and the Spare. So now it's been a week, but I loved this book. I flew through it. I didn't even take time to really tab things up. I have like 3 tabs through here because I just devoured it. My only problem is there's one page that is not in there. And I bought this just over a month ago, and that is over the time limit to be able to get Amazon to print me a new one. So that's unfortunate. But in this one, we follow the second-born princess of a land, and this had a really good first sentence. I think this is the one that I chose for the first sentence choice for my July TBR. Only 2 people had to die for Princess Iona to become queen. Her father, King Gawain, an aloof figure whose passing she would one day mourn, and her older sister, Lizen, whose grave she would gladly dance on should the occasion arise. And I did not realize going into this book how terrible her sister was going to be. I guess, like, if you're gonna dance on someone's grave, it does imply something intense, but wow. So this is by Kate Stradling. You guys, she is either an independent author or like very small. It says some kind of press on here, but her books have all been so very good that I've read. So in this one, we follow Princess Iona. Her sister is about to be married to, so her terrible sister is about to be married to the prince of the neighboring kingdom, which just so happens to be this guy that Iona knew from her school years. So she went to school in this neighboring kingdom for various reasons, which are talked about in the book, but I don't want to give spoilers. And this guy was the biggest bully of them all. She didn't say who she was, also for various reasons. So she went like under an assumed name, so he just assumed she was some kind of peasant girl and treated her as such. So she's so excited that her terrible sister is marrying this terrible guy. But things don't go quite as planned. I'm gonna be raving about this book for a while, so definitely recommend this. It's intense, I will say that. It's intense, but I think it's worth it. I'll leave it at that. And then I went on to read The Walled City by Ryan Grodin. So she wrote the Wolf by Wolf and Blood for Blood. I don't know why I always stumble over that one. Duology. And I actually thought this was part of it because the cover is very similar, but this is very different. So the little catchphrase here is run fast, trust no one, always carry your knife. And we follow 3 characters in this walled city, in this make-believe world. This is kind of based off of an actual historical walled city in China. So this is a weird one to categorize because it's kind of historical, but it's also kind of dystopian, and it's kind of fantasy. Like it's so many different things. We follow these three main characters in this terrible city. This is where like the worst of the worst go to this walled city, and it's ruled by this man who smuggles drugs and has a brothel and all that kind of stuff. So our one main character, we don't know much about him. For some reason, he's in the walled city and he has a timeline. He has to do something by a certain amount of days. We kind of figure that out as we go. Then we are following I think she's like 17-ish year old girl who is in a brothel. And I'll say the book is not like super descriptive, but she's in a brothel. So like it's dark. I wouldn't give this to, you know, young teens at all. And she was kidnapped. Well, no, she wasn't kidnapped. Her father sold her. Nice guy. And her younger sister, unbeknownst to the girl in the brothel, followed the van that brought her sister to this walled city and has been searching for her sister. She wants to get her out, but she hasn't been able to find her. And I think she's been there for 2 years. And their stories all collide. And it's good. And like the younger sister has been pretending she's a boy ever since she's been in this walled city because girls end up in brothels. So yeah, lots of stuff going on. It is dark, but I think it is, I don't know how to explain it, like an acceptable amount of darkness. Like it makes sense for the situation. Really enjoyed it. Like flew through this one. The next one is a very different vein. I finished my book I was supposed to read in June. Okay, I know I forget how to say her name. Elisa Childers? Maybe eventually I'll get it right. So this is another gospel. A lifelong Christian seeks truth in response to progressive Christianity. Almost dropped the book. This one is really good, really deep. In June, emotionally, mentally, I was just struggling a bit for various reasons, and so I couldn't put as much mental energy in this, so I carried it over to July. Just finished it. Really enjoying it, or enjoyed it, and I have another one of her books on my shelf I want to read. Highly recommend it. I have a few people I want to pass this on to and recommend and share it with. I generally just, yeah, don't talk nearly as much about the nonfiction. And then another fiction fantasy story. There's definitely, like, I'm going hard into the fantasy. And I'm currently doing a video on this, so it will already be up. My finishing series I'm in the middle of, Siege and Storm. This is book 2 in the Grishaverse trilogy. I feel like it ended up getting a second name for the series, but really enjoyed this. So we follow a main character who in book 1 realized that she was like a Grisha, which is kind of a person with powers, that they are like seen as really high up, but people are also scared of them because they have so much power. Book 1, I think I gave 4 stars back in June. Book 2, we hit the ground running. There are twists and turns and characters in here with humor that I really enjoy, that like lightens the mood a little bit when we are in some intense situations. And this is going down as another 4 or 5 star book. You'll know already if you've watched that finishing series I'm in the middle of where I'm going from here, but at this point I just finished this book. I don't know where I'm going from here, but I'm going to be reading more books in the series for that video, and also just trying to finish series. So I won't say too much about that, but 4 books down, really good reads. I feel like I'm on fire this month. Often in July and August, I really struggle with reading. I read like a handful of books each of those months, which is much lower than normal. And this month, I am just going above and beyond my norm. I'm just shooting for the stars. But this one has to go back to the library, and this one has to go back to the library. So I'm gonna go do that and get some more books. And now for the last stack of books that I read. Oh man, I still have, yeah, what did I say? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, actually 7 books. There was a small one hiding there. Some of these I talked about in different vlogs. So the first one is Ruin and Rising. I filmed this, was part of the trying to complete series video, and this is the final book in the Grisha trilogy. So we're in this world where there's these people that are called Grisha that are like, they're like the magical people, and people appreciate them, admire them, and also are afraid of them. And our main character ends up being like this very powerful Grisha. Book 2, I loved it. Gave 5 stars. Book 3, like, went downhill so far, like just hit the ground and burned, in my opinion. I mean, I still gave it 3 stars. There were some things I liked, but like there's so many things that annoyed me in here. There's a couple, actually maybe just one relationship that I really didn't like. There was just, I don't know, I feel like just poor choices made in how things were done. The last line though, I did read in that vlog. I loved this. They had an ordinary life full of ordinary things, if love can ever be called that. I love that because I feel like my life is probably an ordinary life to people, and I feel like this quote is very fitting. Other than that, especially after coming off of a 5-star second book, I felt very disappointed in this one. So for more of my thoughts, I talked about it as I read it in the series video. And then the last book I read in that video was The Immortal Abyss. This is a duology. It's called the Threshold duology. This book is coming out in September, and I gave this one 5 stars. Same with book 1. And so I completed a series before it's even out, which is great. So in the first book, our main character is trying to find this eternity gate. There's a key, she's supposed to find it. In this book, we are taking place after that, and things have kind of gone a little bit chaotic in the world, and we're with this main character named Tal. She has fire magic, but there are 4 different forms. There's magnificence, wisdom, temperance, and justice, and she has a lot of, and then there's like different tiers. Tier 1 is like limited, tier 2 is like average. It's all forms present with 1 focus. Tier 3 is all forms present with 2 or more reaching great power, and she is very powerful in some of these, but low in temperance. So like her magnificence is high. She has a high source of fire, but her temperance, which controls the fire, is really low. So she can cause a lot of problems with a lot of fire and not a lot of control. And so she feels very self-conscious. It's not quite the right word, but because of it. And so in this one, there is a prophecy about there being a star palm that will come, and so Tal is part of the rebellion, and they are looking for the star palm. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It took me a while to remember like what had happened in book 1, and they're connected, and the main character from book 1 does come into here, but they're also like very separate books. So it wasn't like it was just really just continuing a story like some series do. Once I like figured out what was going on there, I was so in. Really enjoyed it. Then I read my Agatha Christie for the month. So I'm doing a monthly video over on Patreon with our Agatha Christie. This time it was Nemesis, which is a Miss Marple mystery. And I had a note in here from Charlene that she has a YouTube channel here. I'll leave it linked below. That you're supposed to read a Caribbean mystery next, because this one actually has a character from the Caribbean mystery in, well, this one's because of one of those characters. And like, I tapped this baby up. I loved it so much. We were like with Miss Marple. I said in my video for Patreon, and I'm still, that one ended up being really, really long. I might do a condensed version and put it up here. I haven't decided for sure yet, but I said in that video that this reminded me of a Mrs. Polifax book. It was just like we were with her and she was going to places and solving things, and it felt very Mrs. Polifaxy. Whereas some Miss Marples, she's hardly even in the book. She's very quiet in the corner. This one was like full on Miss Marple. So in this one, she there is a will. This guy gives her a mystery, but he doesn't tell her what it is. He sends her a couple clues, and he wants her to solve something, and we go with her. And it's so interesting because like for the first 100+ pages of the book, you don't even know what the mystery is. So not only are you going to try to solve a mystery, but first you have to figure out what the mystery is. So I really enjoyed this one. Next, I did a vlog, which I haven't put out yet. So some spoilers here. I read Tex. This was my Patron of the Month's pick for me. This is by S.E. Hinton and is very reminiscent of The Outsiders, but like, I can't remember how many stars I gave it, maybe 2. Like it felt so flat. So our main character is a boy named Tex. He's 15. He lives with his older brother, and their mother is dead, and their father is in the rodeo and hasn't been home for like 6 months or something. And Tex keeps getting in trouble. Like, he's really smart, but he just does dumb things and gets people in trouble and has no cares. And his older brother is trying to hold them together, make the money for the family. Their dad sometimes sends money, but he hasn't for a while. So in the very first chapter, we find out that Tex loves his horse and like loves rodeo stuff. And before the chapter's over, his brother has sold both of their horses to get them groceries and pay the bills and stuff. And I thought it was going to be really good. Based on the first chapter, I'm kind of tearing up after the first chapter. But there was so much content in here. Like I don't think drug use is ever good, but like characters were smarter than that and still did drugs and made stupid choices. There's a lot of like crude stuff going on in here. I felt like it was trying to be The Outsiders but failing, so I would not recommend Tex. Then I read Caraval by Stephanie Garber, and I have mixed feelings on this one. So this is, it says, remember, it's only a game. Our main character gets invited to this like magical carnival game type thing, which sounds cool, but it was hard to know what was real and what wasn't. I mean, you don't really know through the whole book until the end, and it felt, I don't know, I just didn't like the choices she made. I was confused a lot. The ending, I don't know how I feel about the ending. I think I will finish the series, but I will definitely get those books from the library. Yeah, I still, like, I thought by the time I finished I would have more thoughts and be able to like say what I'm thinking more, but I don't. So I think my next video will be the reading vlog where I read Tex and this one and start another book. And so if you want to hear some of my thoughts as I go, you can watch that. I'm still very confused. I think I need to like finish the series to know how I really feel, and I think it's a trilogy. And then I've heard good things about her next series, so I think they're just going to be library books for me. Then I finished You Are a Tree by Joy Marie Clarkson. This one is, it says you are a tree and other metaphors to nourish life, thought, and prayer. And so every chapter is like how we are like trees and how we're not like trees, how wisdom is like light and how it's not like light. Safety is not a fortress, but it also is. Love is not a disease. There's a lot of play on words here, and I was definitely thinking about metaphors a lot while I was reading this. It was really good. It was, I don't think a lot of it, I don't know, I guess a lot of it I didn't appreciate, maybe is the right word, but there were a lot of things that I really did appreciate. One of my favorite quotes from here is, many things will call to you in life, and you need not answer them all, but to never answer is loss. To never give yourself to a great work, the creation of a work of art, the love of a person, the bearing of a child, the limitations of a call to ministry, that too is loss. Life is made meaningful by the things we say yes to, even though we can't see to what end those things will lead. So yeah, there was a lot in here. Some parts were really deep, like she's, quoting these philosophers and stuff, and then all of a sudden she had like some lines of a Beyonce song in here. I was like, oh, didn't see that coming. So yeah, and then one thing she does in here is this similar to what she did in Aggressively Happy, which if I had to choose, I liked that one better. This one just felt a little more academic, maybe. At the end she has living, thinking, praying, so there's usually a verse some living metaphors, different things. So there's a painting that she suggests, a film, an image or text, a song, a poem, a podcast. And then she explains how they relate to that chapter. I do like her writing a lot. I started one of Sarah Clarkson's books a long time ago and I still haven't finished it. Unfortunately, I have a tendency to prioritize library books, which is just reinforcing the fact that I shouldn't just buy all the books. I did enjoy it though. I still gave it 5 stars, I'm pretty sure. Maybe 4. Either way, it was good. And the last one was a DNF. So I just started this book in my reading vlog that will be coming out. It's Girls Like Her by Melanie Sumrow. And this is about a wealthy businessman, okay, I can't talk, is dead. And a 15-year-old, she was 14 at the time, is in jail awaiting the trial for his murder. And there a lot of trigger warnings for this book. Thankfully, right at the beginning of the book, there is this whole like why this story was inspired, like how it was inspired. The author used to be a lawyer. Yeah, and many of her cases involved children and teens. So she took a lot of her experience as a lawyer and has put it into here. And she mentions like content may be triggering, including drug and alcohol abuse, physical and sexual violence, tense exchanges with law enforcement. Like there's a whole list, which is really good going into it. A lot of that stuff, to me, it depends on context when I'm reading it, right? If it's supposed to be like funny, that's different to me than if something's being educational and kind of like based on true facts or things. I really liked that this is mixed media. So we start out with a newspaper, there's letters, there's different court documentation, different notes from a lawyer, like there's all this stuff going on. By page, was it like 70 or 100, I was just like, I kind of just don't care. We can tell that our main character is hiding something from us. We know that much. Like she's not being honest with the person that she's talking to throughout most of this book. And I like that kind of like unreliable narrator idea often, but it wasn't sucking me in, and I was like, it's a library book. Why am I pushing through if I don't really care? So what I did is I jumped to very close to the end and read the last number of pages. And I'm so glad I didn't finish it because I would have felt so ripped off. Now I can't say things without giving spoilers, but I hate what the author did with this book. Yeah. So I can't say anything because it would all be spoilers, but I wouldn't recommend this book. Maybe some people will love how it ended, but I don't. Yeah. So unfortunately, I finished the month on a DNF and then realized that I hadn't finished my Read Your Bookshelf challenge for July, which was the case book of Sherlock Holmes. So I'll finish that in August. I read tons of great books. I would love to hear what you read and loved or didn't love in August. Are there books I should stay away from? These two, I think, were probably my worst ones from the month. I don't even remember what I all read at the beginning. Oh, and definitely disappointed in that. Those are my worst ones of the month. My favorite ones were definitely The Immortal Abyss, The Heir and the Spare, Nemesis. What else did I have on my stack? Yeah, so I said The Heir and the Spare, and Another Gospel was great. Lots and lots of good books. Oh, I still haven't given my daughter back 100 Days of Sunlight. This one surprised me so much in my reading romance vlog. Didn't see that coming. Oh yes, and another DNF was Emerald Windows, another disappointment. So I had some excellent books. Like I read this one in like one day, less than 24 hours, like 12 to 16 hours, somewhere in there. Great reading month. Unfortunately, there's always some duds you gotta work through to get to the good ones. So let me know some of your favorites from the month, you guys.